महफिल ज़िक्र नात है, दूसरा हफ्ता 11वीं शरीफ और तीसरा हफ्ता नमाज तस्बीह और महीने का आखिरी हफ्ता माहाना गोशाए दुरूद मुनक्किद किया जाता है, जिसमें मिलियंस टाइम दुरूद पाक रसूल पाक सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम की बारगाह में.
Hi everyone, you are listening to the Community Hour on Revive FM. This is your host Shaban Mohammed and my partner in crime is Dean Armand. Dean, just say hello because you were there last week.
Hello, my name is Dean Armand. I'm a local Newham resident.
And we have a very special guest there today, Miss Sarah Ruiz, cabinet member, lead cabinet member for children and young people. Hi Sarah, how are you finding your return to Newham politics?
Interesting, very interesting, very exciting.
And I'd just like to wish all our listeners a great Ramadan Kareem. And as you know, Ramadan is it's getting closer and closer, and it's running down. Can you just tell me, Sarah? Can you tell me a bit about your political history and what actually made you get into politics?
Okay.
And when you actually came into Newham as well?
All right. Okay. Well, I was born and brought up in Devon. Moved to Kent and then to Surrey.
Yeah.
And then back down to Devon. Joined the Labour Party when I was about 30, but had always voted Labour. My dad was a staunch Labour Party member, ward secretary, etc. And I moved to Newham in 1978. And the local branch of the party was completely moribund. I lived in Custom House.
Yeah.
And they didn't exactly say we're full, but actually that's what they implied. But I eventually joined the party, and how I came to be on the council the first time round was that the council were making huge cuts to the voluntary sector in which I worked.
Yeah.
And I bumped into the infamous Mike Brown in a local hostelry and gave him a real mouthful of what I thought. And he said, well, if you can do anything any better, come and join us. And I said, yeah, all right, I will.
Yeah.
And then about a month later, Councillor Tom Jenkinson died. And he'd been a long-time councillor in what is now Beckton Ward, but was the old South Ward. Yeah. And Mike Brown rang me up and said, do you fancy it? And I said, yeah, okay. Little did I know what I was letting myself in for. Huge campaign. Yeah. First time that the BNP had stood in Newham in such a large number. But with hard work, and I mean hard work, that was every day, almost all day, I was elected with the largest majority on the council at that time.
How was Newham when you came into politics, in terms of race relations, the poverty? Was it still, an impoverished borough?
It was far more impoverished than it is now.
Yeah.
If you look around the borough now with all the redevelopment and the regeneration, Custom House was like, well, just Custom House. There was nothing. If you'd have said to me all those years ago that houses in Custom House would be selling for $500,000, I would have laughed, because people were lucky enough to. They just wouldn't have thought about selling for that sort of money.
Just like Canning Town, really.
Just like Canning Town, yeah. Custom House, Canning Town. The only difference is that Canning Town had a high street and Custom House didn't.
Yeah.
Would I say the race relations? Well, we were fortunate, I think. We had an excellent organisation called Newham Monitoring Project at that time, which was at its heyday.
Obviously, we had Michelle last week talking about that.
Exactly. And so I think that probably we had better race relations as in organisations than we do now.
Yeah.
But Newham has never really, I think that we've never really had the anger and the mistrust in the community that other boroughs have had. I think that And I think that's fortunate. I don't think it's anything that anyone has particularly done. I just think we have communities from all over the world who live side by side and allow each other to do their own thing.
And I think that's what makes Newham so great.
Absolutely.
The multiculturalism. And I think it's the one area in London where multiculturalism has really worked well. I think we all get on reasonably well with everyone, and I think it's great that we see different communities that have settled in Newham.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's amazing when you think that from someone like me who came born and brought up in Devon, where actually even today people would stop if they saw a black guy walking down the road, to come to a borough like Newham was a culture shock for me. I don't mind admitting it, but I've loved every minute of it.
And I think what is really great that you're now the councillor for Custom House.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was, as you know, I came back onto the council after a break of 12 years. It was not part of my life plan. As far as I was concerned, I was retiring last August. But Roxana asked whether they could use my cafe as a headquarters for her campaign, and I said yes, and the bug got me again. I stuffed envelopes and made phone calls.
Well, I think everyone in this room was a part of that campaign, and I think it's ironic that we've got a great mayor, and I mean we actually live by that logo, people at the heart of everything, because I think we are changing Newham Council for the better, and actually,
bit by bit.
And I think for the first time, what I can say about residents is a real buzz about Newham as a borough now, as to rather than before when obviously people were against a certain regime. And I think people are starting to come more. The communities coming to more together now.
Yes, I think that for the first time in many years they're being listened to, and there is a can-do attitude. People do feel that they somehow are responsible for their own destiny, whereas before they had no hope. It was nothing to hope for, certainly as far as the council is concerned.
And especially in your ward, Custom House, with regeneration, like my ward, I think we've had regeneration, and it varies where it's been successful or not.
Yeah, and I think one of the most exciting things about the regeneration in Custom House is that actually it's being co-designed and co-produced by the community. There will be hiccups. We had our first steering group meeting last night with 6 elected reps from the community, but it wasn't plain sailing. Nothing ever is when you're relying on the council and legal to deliver.
Yeah, that's right. I think Dean can talk about something about that particular meeting. How would you say about this co-production in Custom House?
I'm been involved with co-production before with the selection of the Director for Public Health, and was very impressed with how that group operates within the council. There's a real genuine commitment there to get things done. It was very interesting to hear talk about how things used to be down in Custom House, and as I'm from, like yourself, Shabs, coming from Canning Town North, we're part of the same community neighbourhood, and I think it's really, really positive. There's a lot going on there. The old post office in Freemasons Road is being converted. There are definite attempts, promises made to hire local people to be fully engaged in all aspects of the co-production and regeneration. As someone has experienced, as Sarah has said, not everything always goes quite as smoothly as we'd like, and there'll definitely be some ups and downs. But that can all be handled, because if there are disagreements or misunderstandings, because the positive attitude is there, that's enormously different from how things could have been in the past, where, sadly, it seems to me that Custom House was very often simply neglected.
I think if you look at areas south of the A13, I can remember, I worked for 30 years in the voluntary sector in Newham, and I can remember there were projects who were funded by the council to provide a service across Newham, who didn't think that across the A13 was actually part of the same borough. And there are still people now, if I talk about North Woolwich, people say, oh yeah, but that's not Newham. it is Newham.
Yeah.
But gradually we've seen the regeneration, and I mean there's still loads to do.
And obviously it's important because we've got at the moment, we've got a housing crisis.
Absolutely.
Which is growing bigger by the day.
Yeah.
And we're getting more families actually coming into Newham, and the bottom line is the council have to have a strategy of rehousing people, and also it's about coexisting and making sure our communities function properly as well. One of the things I was actually going to touch on now is your new role as lead member for Children and Young People Services. How have you found this role when you took it over? And what I can say about Sarah, I think she's one of the most hardworking councillors I've seen, because every time I actually go into Dockside, she's always in meetings. She's got probably one of the hardest portfolios of any cabinet member. Am I right in that?
I think that there are probably challenges in all of our portfolios. Yeah. I think housing is also a really tough call. Yeah. And I think any service like ours that's dealing directly with the public, directly with residents, and in my case with children and young people, is always going to be on the edge. Yeah. Because budget-wise, we're always overspending on our children's social care, and that's mainly because how do you say no to somebody that comes in through the front door that is in need? And you can't say, oh well, sorry, we've only got 5 million this year. Now you best go somewhere else. So I think it is tough. But when I first came in, we had, it was an induction of fire, really, because although I had been involved in what was social services when I was last on the council, everything has changed. So we had a director who was responsible for adults and children's, but the portfolio I have not only is children's social care, it's youth hubs, youth safety, and children's health, and that is quite. So I work across almost 3 directorates. It
is hard, and as I say, like working with. Obviously, we're putting new plans in actually to work on things like the youth hubs and actually get youth engaged in Newham. Yeah. Obviously, we've had our dealings with knife crime and victims of knife crime, which is, at the end of the day, the mayor has said, we want children at the heart of everything.
And children to be safe.
And to be safe, which is more important. Dean, would you?
Yeah, I'd agree with that completely. I'm fortunate to be involved indirectly in housing with regard to a new group that's come together with the great deal of help and encouragement from the council, the E16 CLT, which is a community land trust. And the idea there is to put the council together with the community to be given potentially some properties, but also some land to develop housing in Custom House to meet the needs of the local community. And in contrast to how things used to operate in the past, this is massively interesting and also very encouraging to see the commitment to involve the community and put residents at the heart of everything. And you don't get anything more to do with putting people at the heart of things than getting them involved in designing their own homes.
Absolutely.
Especially with our young people as well, it's very important.
Yeah.
That's a key aspect of it, because the idea is not just to build homes, because communities need more than homes, but there's this whole issue of opening up of training and getting local people in the local community involved in all aspects of the project.
Absolutely. I think that one of the things with the steering group for the Custom House regeneration is, although we've got 6 elected community reps, all with very different skills, but all very interesting people, what is missing is our young people. Yeah. So last night we agreed that we would have 2 local young people who would sit on the steering group, and then we also agreed that we would take out the project as it develops into the local primary schools so that they have an input. And I think it could be a really interesting project for primary school kids as part of their curriculum, I mean, we have amazing talents in our.
I think we do. I think we've got. I think it's about getting that talent to work.
Absolutely.
And I think in the past we've neglected the talent, and I think, you know, at the end of the day we really need to start engaging.
It's about aspirations.
Aspirations, and like myself in Canning Town, I think a lot of our youth, you know, their aspirations have been stifled by not having lack of poor housing and needs as well. Obviously, you know, if the father was unemployed and going living his life, betting his money away, or being an alcoholic, 99% of the time that young person would be following the same route. And at the end of the day, it's about having the right facilities and having the right needs there to actually engage with these young people and get them focused, to actually get themselves out of social deprivation and social poverty.
And I mean, I also think, I mean, in the heyday of when, because I worked in Custom House in Canning Town, when we had, I was going to say money pouring out of our ears, because we did. We had SRB 2, SRB 5, SRB 6, but actually it worked on the physical environment, but there was very little expenditure on what I would call the community. So, you know, we may have had some community grants, but actually there was nothing really tangible. And then all of a sudden we had training became the in word, and we were inundated with training projects. But I can remember then that probably anybody I met in Custom House and Canning Town, young people, actually didn't even know anybody who was working. I meant in a proper job. I don't mean the alternative economy.
I think you know, the aspirations normally for people in our areas and young people is always like painting, decorating, low-skilled jobs.
Low-skilled jobs.
We've never actually focused our young people on actually raising expectations and actually put them in a really good quality jobs.
Permanent
jobs.
Not the. You know, I mean, I can remember when Cllr was being built, and the promise that was, oh, this will be amazing. This will be jobs for all the young people in Newham, blah blah blah. But in actual fact, Cllr themselves at that time employed 4 people.
Yeah.
Just 4 people, and the rest of them were all subcontractors. So you could get a job erecting stalls or stands, but that was for maybe 3 days, and then the exhibition was on for a week, and then you would be employed to take them down. Yeah. But that's not proper. I mean, that's not proper work. That's not proper job. You couldn't sustain anything on that.
I think that's the aspirations. I think during the previous administration, you know, the aspiration of our young people was never there.
Never.
You know. But
that starts at the schools, Shabs, to be honest. I mean, you know. At a time when I was last on the council, we had local schools who were claiming that all the year 6s who were moving up from primary school to secondary school had such poor reading ages that they would never ever have been able to succeed. Yeah. Now that isn't the kids. You're not telling me that all 30 kids in a class all couldn't read. That's because right. Actually nobody bothered with them.
I think Dean here does teach at Gainsborough.
Yeah, I help out with teaching British values, but also with literacy, and there's been a marked improvement in that activity. But as Sarah said, we need to follow on, and we need to bring aspirations. And one of the steering groups that was referred to earlier has been very interesting, because I mentioned the old post office in Freemasons Road. It's got, everyone's familiar with them, one of those very effective but very ugly steel grey grills that comes down. And when the steering group representatives were having a discussion about that, really simple thing came up. Why not go to the Shipman Youth Centre, run a competition on who can paint or come up with a design for it, get them down to a short list of 5, vote on it, and then pay some of the local youth to actually do that art, that street art, which isn't always to everyone's taste, but it's that sort of, it sounds very simple, but it's that sort of activity that gets the buy-in from our youth.
Well, I think also if you look at Freemasons Road, I mean, there's 23 units there, and 13 of them are empty.
Yeah.
And they're empty for various reasons. And one of the things that I suggested, because there allegedly is going to be meanwhile use in 3 of them, but I've been waiting for over a year for that to happen. But when I was talking to colleagues in Regen, you know, it looks so poor. It looks just like so poor that, and I said, if all of the shops along those parades all have these horrible metal shutters, now they could be brightened up. So not just the post office shutter, but that could be the whole row of shops.
I think the main thing is it's about your environment, and I think, you know, for long, if we can change the environment for our young people and inspire them, actually, you know, the council are working with you. We're changing the environment. You know, we're putting money into young people services at the moment.
We are 1.4 million.
1.4 million, which is great, but at the end of the day, it's just a splash in the ocean. We could do with a lot more money.
Well, we're hoping that, you know, if Terry opens his purse, we might be able to have.
We're all about the cabinet lead for finance, who's going to be here next week. So I'll make sure. He's here next week. So we'll make sure that we start pulling him up, and we need, like I said to you, this is a very important, even for me, being a local councillor, young people are really, really important, and we need to inspire them, because, you know, like I said to you, these are going to be the next generation of Newham residents that are making a difference to people's lives, and we need to do as much as possible for them.
And I lived in the Netherlands for a long time, and street art and painting and the way the environment looks, it isn't just a nice to have, it's not frittering away the council's money, it really impacts people's behaviour.
Absolutely.
When they see the area has been looked after, and I'm aware that Cllr Shaban Mohammed's pioneered a scheme called the Big Clean-Up, which involves the council with local residents and local businesses going in and just cleaning up the environment. It brought the community together, it made a very clear and positive message that the council actually do care, and local businesses are now getting interested in sponsoring these sort of things.
But I mean, you know, if everybody has to play their part, and I think that before, there was no encouragement for businesses or local people to even have any sort of investment in their area. I mean, you know, we don't have rubbish bins in Freemasons Road. Yeah. So all we have are blue bags hung on the railings, as if like somebody's just.
Well, this is. I mean, at the end of the day, like I said to you, I got elected on a change manifesto because I was so annoyed with my local councillor. You know, I actually fought to bring this change to my area, and I think it's really important that we get more people engaging in politics. Because I'll be honest with you, the politics is not about. You know, national politics, it's about local politics. I think local politics is more important. I mean, that mother, obviously we're talking about things like academisation and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, it all focuses on one aspect, and you have to make that change. And like you say, you were against the cuts in services, and you fought against that, and you fought to become a councillor. And we need more people locally to actually engage and start.
Yeah, but local politics isn't just about sitting in a meeting.
Yeah, that's right.
Deciding who's going to be the chair and the secretary and the whole long list of now officers that we have.
Yeah.
If they aren't actually going to do anything
that's right.
to change things, then they might just well not be there.
Yeah.
And you know, I shouldn't be perhaps hypercritical, but I do think, you know, if you're elected to a position, then you should be taking that position quite seriously and not just a title because it makes you feel better.
Yeah, no, I think we've lacked that in Newham for a long time. I think it's the first time we've actually had politicians, i.e. new councillors that have come in that are actually, some of them are actually quite passionate about their areas and bringing that change into their areas. I think we've not had that in Newham for a long time.
No, one of the things that's really helping the Canning Town and Custom House community neighbourhood is having councillors who come from the actual wards that they represent, because they know them. With the best will in the world, you can be as bright, hard-working, intelligent, enthusiastic as you like, but if you've actually lived in the ward, you know it.
Yeah.
You know who the local people are. You know what the issues are.
Yeah, but it's also, Dean, about the commitment that, I mean, we are very fortunate because Custom House, Canning Town, North and South actually meet very regularly with our local neighbourhood manager. It isn't always plain sailing, but actually if we are the people who should be shaping the agenda for that community neighbourhood, because it's about residents and us working together. It isn't, you know, it isn't rocket science.
I think we need more of that. I think we really, in parts of the borough, we don't have that. You know, there's a disconnect between between the local councillors and local people. We need local people to get more engaged and actually hold their councillors to account for their actions and what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the problems is like things like the RPZ that we've had under the last administration, and you know it's caused chaos. But at the end of the day, it's where there's been a disconnect with the councillors and local people.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it strikes me as being really stupid that I had to do 2 visits this morning, and I couldn't park anywhere because I'm not a resident in that zone, and there were no pay facilities at all.
Yeah.
I mean, you think, well, hang on a minute, how to visit? How?
Well, exactly. I mean, I think, like I said, there is a disconnect, and I think we local people need to engage more with their councillors.
That's definitely true. And one of the things that often gets overlooked is local shops.
Yeah.
I've seen people, they've pulled up, looked at the sign, thought, oh, I can't park here, I'll get a ticket. Yeah. And they've driven off. And now we've got the silly situation, whereas if you, in Canning Town North, you drive down Manor Road, when you get to Canning Town roundabout, you think, well, if I turn right, in less than 5 minutes, I can be in Crisp Street and I can park for free for half an hour. Yeah. If I turn left, I'm going to have to negotiate my way around all the parking zones.
Don't worry, guys. I've got Zulfi Ali who's in charge of parking.
Is he coming here as well?
Well, he's coming at the last show. So any listeners out there, that'll be a phone in. So please phone in and vent your anger. Not vent your anger. I mean,
I think they'll have to be here as well.
Ask some serious questions of the parking review. And I mean, again, it's these new things that we're doing. Obviously, the parking reviews come in, and you know. But Sarah, tell me a bit more about your role and how you find in the council now.
Okay. Well, it's a much different council than when I was on here last. I think it's far more inclusive. I think there is a real can-do attitude. I think we have a very good cabinet. We bring a lot of skills and we support each other. I think that has become quite apparent, and you don't feel as if you're on your own. But Children and Young People Services, I mean, people will know that we received a failing Ofsted report. So we were marked down as... well, I can't even remember what it was we got, but
inadequate.
Yeah. It's always good having Dean here, because obviously he's...
I mean, I knew it was inadequate. I wasn't sure whether it was inadequate and there was one below it. But we have, in some ways, I think it's actually a very good thing. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but I think if we had the next grade up, which requires improvement, I'm not sure there would be necessarily the absolute commitment from everybody to make this better. So we've spent, I mean, the report came out in April, beginning of April, and we have spent the last 6 weeks putting together an improvement plan. Our external person, so the Department of Education, sends in a support person, really. It's a guy called Nigel. Yeah. He was the Director of Children's Services in Leeds, so comes from a very good pedigree in the fact that Leeds is child-centred. Yeah. The Mayor and the Chief Executive will both be actively involved. So Althea will now be chairing the Strategic Improvement Board. Nigel, our help, will be chairing an external strategic board. There will be a political involvement board. Yeah. I mean, it'll be full of boards, we won't know what to do, but we are absolutely determined, and both Carleen, because I don't do it on my own, Carleen...
you know what it was? It's my fault, right? Because I should have actually invited Carleen down.
No, she couldn't have come anyway.
Yeah.
She's busy, but Carleen Lee Parkway is
What I will say, obviously, we're going to be going live in the next couple of months. We're going to be an FM station very soon.
okay.
So what I will do is I'll invite you and Carleen down for a further programme, and obviously Carleen, like me, is a new councillor, so it'd be really interesting to take her take on what inspires her as well.
And passionate about children,
passionate,
and especially with children with special education needs, and has been actually, interestingly enough, an inspiration to me, because I mean, like, you can't be an expert in everything, and I think that we bring very different skills, and we work very well together. And I hope she enjoys it. I would never say that she was an assistant to me. I think we're equals in the sense that we take responsibility for our own area. So Carleen is responsible for corporate parenting. So all our councillors are, in fact, corporate parents. So our young people who are leaving care, they are our responsibility.
That is right, yes.
And I don't think many people understand exactly what that means. And she also has taken responsibility for the youth, the yacht, which is a youth offending team, which is probably going to be having its inspection probably in the next 2 to 3 months. So there's a lot of work being done there at the moment.
I mean, I think you two are a good team, and you work.
We are a good team.
I always see you work really hard.
And we also have a lot of laughs.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really important, because we work very long days sometimes.
No, I've seen you, and I mean, the other aspect is, like, obviously, we've seen knife crime with youth. Obviously, I went to an event on Saturday. Which you attended, and it was all our young people getting together, and it was a really good show. And obviously, one of the key factors was that a youth hub actually saved that young guy's life. And this is why I'm quite passionate that I want more. I mean, I wish we had more money, because I would love to see youth hubs all over Newham.
Yeah, and I was at an event at Little Ilford Youth Hub on Monday afternoon, where an external organisation, in partnership with Berkeley Homes, had taken a cohort of 18 young people, 14 to 16-year-olds, who were on the edge of missing education, on the edge of just being troublesome, and took those. They'd had a 14-week programme, sports-based. But sports was just the anchor, really. Just to get them in. Just to suck them in. That was amazing. The guy leading it, Henry, from Changing Lives, I think it's called, he said you wouldn't have recognised the young people that we saw on that Monday compared to the same young people who had walked through the doors 14 weeks before that. They had a presentation from a young guy who works for Berkeley Homes, which was very long and very boring, I have to say. And the young people, when he said, "Are there any questions?" I was expecting them to be a groan, because at the end of all of this, they were due to go out for Nando's, and Nando's was far more attractive. You can't stop anyone from having a Nando's. No, exactly. But they asked the most intelligent questions, and I'm thinking, my Lord, if your teachers could see you now, because they had written them off. These were young men, all on the edge of exclusion. The school, Little Ilford School, had put them forward and I thought they were a real credit to the school, and I only wish that the teachers had actually come to that event. No, it's really good. Like I said to you, I think we need more of it. We do. I think, like I said to you, I think, we see a lot of youth offending, but we don't actually look at the causes of it. No. And I think we need to really start focusing on the causes of it. Well, I mean, we have a huge issue, Shabs, as you know, with our vulnerable young people involved in the county lines.
Yeah.
And we saw only here at the weekend, a young boy was stabbed in Tollgate Road, Custom House, quite clearly the victim of gangs.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that he's now out of hospital, but actually they're not safe to live where they are now.
But this is really worrying because obviously we've seen gang grooming going on, and it's rife in at the end of the day we can't hide the fact that there is great. But what I would say to parents as well, they need to be more focused in terms of what their kids are getting up to, and especially when they're coming home with expensive clothes that the parents can't afford. We need to actually start looking at the issues and not going around in circles and not dealing with the issues.
Once again, we're coming back to the community. Could I take advantage of Sarah being here and ask her about one of the local activities, which is the Custom House in Canning Town Community Renewal Project?
You can indeed.
About which I know very little.
Okay, all right. I used to work for CH&CT CRP, as it's commonly known. It was formed very interestingly, because it's an anniversary of the Ronan Point, is it not, this week, I think?
It is indeed.
And so they were born out of that. So John McNeil...
Can we just explain to our listeners what Ronan
Point was a tower block in Custom House that there was an explosion and people died.
Yeah.
And it was, at that time, there was a thought that we shouldn't live in tower blocks anymore, that they weren't safe. So the tenants got together and set up the CH&CT CRP. We were based at that time at the Cundy Centre, in what I would always call the bunker, because it had no daylight. And there then was a community campaign to take over what was the old St Luke's Church in Tarling Road, which was, it wasn't falling down, but it had no roof. And that community campaign lasted for nearly 4 years. The charity raised in excess of 3 million. And what you see today is the work primarily of John. I mean, there were others involved, but it now has a community hall, 4 floors of small offices, receives no grant funding from anyone, so is self-financing, and its purpose is actually to work to improve the community. It has quite a large catchment area, so E16 is its catchment area, and it's really a regeneration organisation. But maybe why Dean is interested, maybe, is because it also is the money holder and the employer of Peach, and is heavily involved in working with Dan from Peach to establish the E16 Land Trust.
No, which that is really good, and again it goes down to the fact that if there's people in the community that want to change the community,
and that was a real community campaign, because the church who owned it wanted to knock it down and build houses, but that church was the only building left standing after the Blitz in that area. And even today, these days, we have a remembrance service there, and every year since I can remember, the pupils of Hallsville School, where there are still 240 children buried in the playground, come every year, not normally on the Remembrance Sunday, but normally the Friday before, and lay their own wreath. And I think that's quite remarkable after all these years, that there are parents of the children, or probably grandparents of the children now, who still remember. And that was an absolute heart of the community.
And I think we need more of that. I think I have visited a estate yesterday where it was drugs and prostitution and bits and pieces going
So
on.
Hanforth.
Hanforth, and you know, it's not far from here. But
No.
again, it's a community yearning to be joined together and actually work as a community and actually bring.
So when you asked me earlier on about what, you know, do I think that Newham has changed? I think that there are areas that have drastically changed. But equally, I think there are pockets in this borough that have gone unnoticed and uncared for, and for many, many years.
Yes.
And they aren't necessarily together. So I think if you look at bits of Manor Park, bits of East Ham, where you probably wouldn't still feel safe.
But I think it's the main issue here is that we need to have a multi-faith group into every colour, creed, people in them communities actually need to come together and fight, making sure that, you know, we've got drug dealing, we've got gang grooming, and actually it's about everyone coexisting and actually rooting these sort of things out their communities, and you know, we need more people to engage and actually start focusing on these issues.
That's very true, and one of the recurrent themes here seems to be tragedy. I mean, the welfare state came about after the aftermath of the Hallsville bombing, because the government literally didn't know what to do, and how they lived on that. It took Ronan Point to cause the creation of this charity that's over at St Luke's. And now, of course, it's taking children getting stabbed and killed on our streets to make us motivated. So it is heartrending to think it's constantly taking tragedy and death to get anything done.
Yeah, but I also think, Dean, knife crime and youth violence hasn't just happened in the last year.
No.
But actually under this administration, it's the first time the youth service went from having a budget of probably 5 to 6 million 5-6 years ago to having a budget now of 500,000, and we're expecting.
I think you're talking about 500,000. I think that was when it went at 1.5 million. The last administration was paying councillors, so you can imagine. So councillors were actually getting paid more than money was being put into our youth service.
So up at that 500,000 that was allocated or left to the youth services was expected to run 4 youth hubs, 4 youth zones, and Lynn Crank, who heads up the youth services, has 4 permanent members of staff.
Which is ridiculous.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so this 1.4 million that has been allocated will ensure that those 4 youth hubs this year are open 6 days a week, are open till 10 o'clock at night, and will also be providing a summer programme that will keep our young people safe.
So we've got 4 youth hubs, one in Custom House, one in Forest Gate, one in Little Wilford, and Beckton.
Yeah.
So we've got 4 youth hubs in Beckton.
And then next financial year, there is plans, and we'll be able to ask Terry about that next week, to develop 4 more hubs. Now, they won't necessarily be buildings, because kids don't always want to be in a building. But what we will be doing, where we've got them now, we'll be looking at other areas. So I know that places like Green Street, around that area, have nothing, nor has Canning Town. And East Ham is.
I think they're needed. I think we need more youth.
But that will be working in partnership with our third sector partners, because some of the we can't do it all, and actually.
No, you're right. I think, like I said to you, I think it takes big business. It takes community. Council are one. What people got to realise, we're just one part in that
Absolutely.
clog. We can't do everything, and I think people need to realise that. I mean, like I said to you, we're one part in that clog. But again, it's about community. It's our community, our youth actually engaging and wanting to bring that change into Newham.
Yeah, it definitely seems to be what's required is the buy-in and involvement of the local community with the council and with businesses, stroke organisations that are there. No one of those groups alone can do it.
No, I mean, one of the commitments that we have within our children and young people services is that our leaving care young people want to have a hub, so somewhere where they can be open 24 hours, 24/7, where they feel that they can go and just either chill or meet their friends or whatever. Their biggest issue is loneliness. So they've been part of a family. Very often the families that have fostered them, I'm not sure whether it's the young people who say, I don't want to see you anymore, or whether it's the families, but they suffer hugely from loneliness. But one way in which we can actually be working with partners is that the council will provide the building, but obviously it will need to be furnished.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, I should be knocking on people's like John Lewis and Marks and Spencer's door.
I think we need to do it.
Saying, you know, come on, all we need is a couple of sofas. You must have got X display sofas or whatever. And actually, you know, people like the Magpie Project in Forest Gate who work with mothers and under fives who are in temporary housing, most of the stuff that they have, from nappies to clothing to whatever, comes from donations. Our borough is incredible when you think of the poverty that actually a lot of our families live in. They are always willing to help somebody that they think is less fortunate than themselves.
No, it's really interesting you say that, because obviously it's a month of Ramadan, and obviously it's a time of giving, and it's good to see that our Sarah Ruiz...
and it does, and you know, our Muslim brothers and sisters, I don't think get the actual credit that they deserve, because they raise thousands, not just during Ramadan, but throughout the year, for projects for here and abroad, and they do it very quietly, without any fuss. There's no razzmatazz, and it really should be recognised.
I think slowly, I think we are getting a bit more recognised, and I think there is a need now. I think a lot of our community is actually getting together and working with local groups. Obviously, we've got one in Plaster, Darul Jannah, which actually works quite well with the local community. I mean, John Gray goes to their iftari events and stuff like that. But I mean, you know, even this Menaj al-Quran as well, they're very well connected with the local community.
Yeah, but people also think that you're not welcome. You know, and if I look at the place like the Gurdwaras, who feed thousands a week. I mean, you know, anyone who wants some food is always welcome at any of our faith projects.
Well, I mean, even this Menaj al-Quran is always open to everyone. It's always open to everyone. That's the main thing, which is really good about this organisation.
Yes, it is.
You know, and you know, sometimes they don't take the credit that they deserve.
But I think there's also the perception is that it's not for us.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, when we go on holiday, I don't know about you, but I mean, I'm forever going into old churches and places like that. But actually, there's no difference than us. I know that I can come in here just to have a look round. Yeah. If I've got an interest or whatever, they have always been incredibly helpful. Yeah. To people like me.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Dean, have you got any questions?
Not really. I think we've covered.
Have we? We're almost at the end, aren't we?
No, we've got we have got loads of times. But I mean, you're on about like the youth hubs and stuff like that, and gang grooming, and we've covered quite a large, vast array of topics, but. Is there one area that you would really like? If there was one area in youth services that you would like to change, what area would it be, and where would you a lot more money going into?
I think that youth services. I think I'd like to see stuff that isn't just about building based. Yeah. I think many of our young people. Don't necessarily want to be in a building. I mean, a lot do. They feel safe, but there's a lot of. If you only got to go to Westfield in Stratford, where it's like a magnet. Yeah. And with this new money, we are going to be having a detached youth team working specifically in Stratford, because that's where most of our young people are groomed from.
Yeah.
They hang around there. They're very vulnerable. So yeah, I'd like to see more street-based work, because I think that actually our young people don't just operate between the hours of 9 and 6.
Yeah.
I can remember.
But I think a lot of it's again, it's about social poverty, social deprivation, and I think, you know, it's actually making sure that young people get, one, a good education.
Yeah. But
two,
also, Shabs, it's about, you know, when we were growing up, our mum and dads were probably at home when we got home
That's
from
right.
school, and I would guess now that a lot of our kids come home to no one because their mum and dad are out working.
I think, I mean, one of the biggest factors is the high rents.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when I was growing up, you know, you could actually survive on one salary.
Yeah, you can't now.
You can't now, and that is probably one of the biggest differences that's coming to Britain now.
Yeah, and I think also that the rise in, I think social renting has probably not as bad, but if you look at some of the private rented accommodation in this borough, it's just ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, and you know, I actually fear for the next generation that are going to be looking for properties or trying to get. They can't,
you know,
and you know, again, I mean, we're going to probably see more young people going into crime as a result of trying to get themselves out of social deprivation. And at the end of the day, you know, the way they see it is it's cheaper. It's easier being a drug dealer because obviously you can bring more money in and stuff like that, rather than actually focus on getting a good education. But
it's capitalism, isn't it?
But like I always say to all my young people, just remember that criminal record, which if you do get it, you know, it's a stain on you.
Or you say to them, is it worth dying for?
Yeah.
Are those trainers worth dying for? No, they're not.
No.
I'm aware that you're both councillors, so I don't mean to be controversial, and please think before you answer, but you mentioned that Westfield pulling young people in. If the MSG Sphere was built there and there are going to be 25,000 people coming in 2 or 3 times a day, would we need extra resources to be given to street-based teams?
Well, Shabs can't answer this question because I believe he sits on strategic planning.
Not no more.
Not anymore. In that case, you're very free to answer. There has been a local campaign. I mean, I think that the jobs that they say they're going to create is a very high price to pay for what I would see as a blot on the landscape. Genuinely. You know, that is not... You've only got to be in Stratford Station when West Ham are playing at home and Westfield is open to know that the thought of having 25, 30,000, whatever it is...
25,000.
25,000 people plus staff wanting to leave a building, there will be... It's an accident waiting to happen. And we cannot, as a local authority, continue to provide resources to the private sector for them to make more and more money. And so if it goes ahead, then the planning consent has to include that they have to provide security and rubbish cleaning and everything else, because it is their responsibility, it is not ours. But at the end of the day, you know, will jobs be the key thing? I just don't know.
I think you talk about jobs, but I think in the past, you know, under the previous administration, our young people always been let down via jobs, and you know, we're always sold this myth about jobs and local people are going to get priority, but do they? This is what you've got to look at, because
that's very much been the case, as was mentioned earlier about the Excel Centre.
Yeah, and the airport.
And one of the many things promised for the regeneration of Canning Town and Custom House was job provision.
Yeah.
But again, I think once, you know, I just wish we could have more money being put into youth services, because again, it's about giving our young people the right skills. And when you talk about jobs, it's actually getting them in to those jobs and making sure they've got the skills to get. You know,
It's also, Shabs, about when people want to come and provide anything in our borough buildings or whatever, then actually there should be a minimum buy-in. I know that the mayor now is very hot on, if you're a developer and you want to build houses and you are prepared to do 35 to 40% affordable, and she means
social rent.
Social.
I've actually got that. I had that document the other day. I mean, between what we need to realise here is, and I think I need to tell the viewers, between affordable and social rent. I think Newham social rent, I think there's about 25 to £30 difference between a Newham social rent and a Newham an affordable rent. Yeah.
And she's made it very clear, if you aren't prepared to do that, then go somewhere else and build your houses.
Yeah.
And I think it's a real pity that we didn't adopt that firm hand 5-10 years ago.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I know opposite St Luke's there's a block of 5 blocks.
Yeah.
Is that the Caxton House area?
Yeah.
Development.
Caxton Works, I think.
My dad used to work there. My dad used to work for Goswell's.
330 flats.
Yeah.
The cheapest, which was a studio, was 325.
Yeah.
The penthouse was 1.3 million, and there was not one bit of affordable or social housing in those 5 blocks.
Yeah.
Now, they will have had to have paid the money somewhere, but that's the problem. Where does it go? It doesn't help us.
And like I said to you, again, we're talking about these developers coming in and actually taking ownership and actually saying, look, we're building in Newham, but this is what we want to do for the local community. Because we had this issue with a local car park in Canning Town, which was developed, and on one of the websites or a certain blog, a resident put up there that at least I can use this car park to park my car in, but I won't be able to afford that one of the penthouse flats there. Yeah. So this is a contrast that we've got.
It's very much the case, and when we're talking about jobs, it is very disappointing to see around the Caxton Works development and around Canning Town all the shop units being empty 3, 4, 5 years after they've been built.
But part of that is part of the plan, isn't it, Dean? If we're honest, that the developers have to have those shop units to get through planning permission.
Yeah.
They then wait 5 years, and then they'll be converted into flats. It's a game.
Yeah.
But the rents on certainly at Caxton Works, the rents, and also in Rathbone Market, they're not dissimilar. Yeah. The rents are so high that you couldn't afford to open a business there because you don't. Maybe Rathbone has the footfall, but Caxton Works doesn't have any footfall.
No. I mean that's right. I mean, like I said to you, it's again, we need to hold developers to account. But you mentioned Berkeley Homes. Berkeley Homes are actually got a very big development going on in Stevenson Street. So hopefully we should see some money being poured into maybe we could get some money out of them, and maybe
they were the people who sponsored this event that I went to, and Carleen and I are actually going to meet the top people at Berkeley Homes, mainly because we're interested in seeing the construction, but there will be an ask at the end of that. If they can sponsor those 14 young people with this other organisation, then actually they can do some good for us.
Yeah, we need it.
And if we're in Stevenson Street, in actual fact, then they should be doing something in Canning Town. And I mean, they were very receptive. I mean, it wasn't the case of, when I said, oh, I'd really like to come down and have a look at what you're doing, he's already emailed me. That I think that they are an open door. But the building hasn't started yet. But I mean, they were very proud of the fact that there was going to be 40% social rented housing there.
Yeah, I mean it's really good, and I just want really good things for Newham, and especially our young children.
I must say I've had dealings with Berkeley Homes, both at Stevenson Street, and more recently I was at the Cody Dock Business Breakfast, where someone from just across the water in Tower Hamlets was part of a Berkeley Homes development there. was very interested in talking to people. He was talking about connectivity, about not just for people, but also for the wildlife around the Cody Dock area. And I found them to be very helpful. And he immediately sent me an email and said we'd love to meet up and take things forward.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that, you know, we've had our fair share of cowboys in Newham who, you know, don't really care about what they're doing. I mean, and I think it was very refreshing to meet somebody from a developer who actually is prepared to put their money where their mouth is. They know what community is about, and they're prepared to do something to support it. So I mean, I look forward to working with them. But you know, they have to recognise where they're going to be, and actually, you know, there is nothing else there in Stevenson Street, so that, you know, we can build as many houses as we like, but if there's also not the infrastructure, then actually, you know, our hospital doesn't get any bigger.
Yeah, that's right.
Our GPs don't get any less busy.
Well, I mean, with a lot of these, again, with the developers coming into Newham, I mean, again, we need to make sure that the right health resources are being put in, because obviously you're talking about, you know, the whole of Newham. I mean, it's just we're not just talking about Canning Town here. I mean, we'll have developments probably going in Beckton, other areas, maybe in Manor Park, but
we're talking about children and young people. Obviously the schools need the right support
Absolutely.
to absorb the extra
but you
population.
but the thing is the interesting part about that is that actually our primary schools have got extensive empty places.
Yeah.
So I'm a governor at a local school in Stratford, well I think they're Stratford still, who are actually having to make staff redundant because of pupil numbers falling. Now, for every new free school that's built, obviously parents like a shiny new building, but actually what they need to recognise is that for every shiny new building, that we still have some really great schools that are going to be dwindling because of these new free schools. They're not even under our control. You know, we have no say whatsoever in the free schools that are popping up all around us. And they, you know, I just think there's got to be a change of government to bring back education to be in partnership with the local authority. We would hopefully then see the end of the academies, because they have been the scourge of this borough.
They are. I mean, like I said to you, I think it's a disgrace that you know, schools have started to become businesses, and I think parents need to realise that, because academies are just businesses, and
very much so, and they operate in isolation from the local community.
Isolation.
And you're on about Sarah, it's quite interesting about young people. What we need to highlight is that how some academy schools literally kick out
off-rolling all the time,
getting rid of pupils that don't meet the grade. I mean, this is
we celebrated, or some of us celebrated the achievement of Brampton and their however many people they got to Oxford.
Yeah.
But actually, I don't. Out of those young people, I think there was only one that was a Newham person.
Yeah.
Because Brampton off-roll more than anybody else.
Yeah.
But then they take kids. They cream off from everywhere
Some
else.
of them are travelling over an hour a day
Absolutely.
each way.
Yeah. And I mean, it's the same as probably to a lesser degree to Chobham. But I mean, you know, they aren't providing any better education.
Yeah, that's right.
Our young people aren't achieving better just because it's got the word academy.
But again, I mean, it's about expulsion. You know, when these kids, especially the A-level students, don't meet the grade, off you go, and then again it's that cycle of gang grooming, and then again it's left down to the local authority to pick up the pieces.
Well, I mean, you've only got to go outside the pupil referral unit any afternoon of the week to see these, you know, people hanging around waiting, just waiting to chat to what they would know would be a vulnerable young person. You know, do you want a new pair of trainers, or you want this, or you want that? I mean, you know, it's we have police there all the time.
Sarah's highlighted a really interesting issue, which is these academy schools that are based in Newham that have received tens of millions of pounds from Newham Council for various building works, and yet they're off-rolling local pupils and replacing them by pupils from outside the borough. So basically, Newham Council is effectively subsidising the
Yeah, but
academies.
it's also land grab as well, isn't it, Dean?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you've only got to look at somewhere like Forest Gate Community School that tried to take away a whole right of way in Forest Gate.
Yeah, our Coombe Way.
Coombe Way,
yeah.
And I mean, then it was at planning again this week, where they were talking about what they say is a bit of spare land that they want to incorporate. Well, actually, no, it's not your land.
Yeah.
You know, you got rid of your sports facilities to build something else. Don't try and take a bit of our land.
Yeah, that's right. This programme has come to an end, and it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. I think I could have.
We could have been here all day.
I think, and it's been really, really good. And hopefully, I see our listeners next week. And obviously, I'm on Facebook, so guys, please give me some likes. And
some likes? What's that? That must be
some thumbs up, please.
Thumbs up, okay.
Okay, take care and goodbye and Assalamu alaikum.